Hello and welcome back to another episode of Your Drone Questions Answered. I'm John Dickow with the Drone Launch Academy, here to find the answers to your drone questions. These are questions that you yourself submit for this podcast. Today's question is another business question. It is, what are some top industry verticals you can break into? These are drone industry verticals. We're talking about things like real estate, videography, photography. Where could you find success? What is saturated? Which industry is less saturated? I'm welcoming back Nathan Sheets. He's the founder of the Drone Ranger. Nathan, thanks for being back with me today.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me back. We just couldn't get away from the marketing and the business development, could we?
No, not at all. But I'm finding that's just more to talk about after every conversation that we have. Before we get any further, I want to just remind our audience, tell us a little bit about the Drone Ranger. What do you do? What kind of services you offer?
Sure. So we're a drone service provider. So we collect data using drones and provide value to our client, whether that be in construction, telecom, videography, different industries like that. We're based just outside of Louisville, Kentucky, in the Bluegrass State, and we've been in business going on 4 years this summer. Loving it, man. Loving it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. That's great for being in business 3 years. Excellent.
Thank you. Yep.
And obviously, a very good segue into our topic. You obviously offer a variety of services. Our community here at Drone Launch Academy, a lot of us here are looking to apply drones to our business, our work, whether it's our current business, whether it's a new business we're looking to create with a drone, using a drone as a tool. But where do you start? Where do you might be passionate about a certain or an industry or vertical, but how do you know which vertical may be a safer bet than another?
Sure. So it totally depends on the industry and the region that you're in. And this kind of tails off of our previous podcast where we talked about marketing tips. So if you haven't watched that, definitely go watch that. This is more of the, how do I decide where I want to go? So I want to start a drone business, or maybe I have started a drone business. I've got a drone. I've gone out and taken pictures at a local park or the mountains nearby or whatever. But how do I actually do some market research into what's out there? Because I remember starting this business 4 years ago. I didn't come from any specific industry that currently utilizes drones. So I was in school to be an airline pilot. When I kind of made the career change, I didn't have construction experience. I didn't know a lot about telecommunications. I didn't know even a lot about software in general. I just didn't have that background. So I would start by saying, if you have any kind of experience or background in anything like that, video editing, maybe you did some video editing for a friend, or you do some light photography, something like that, I would start with some of the traction that you've already got, if that makes sense. And start with yourself, and then I would go to some connections that you have, some personal friends, or it can be business through your previous job, basically connections into some of these verticals and industries that you've already got, right? If you've already got a connection and a relationship with somebody, I would start there, right? But for anybody that maybe doesn't have either of those, kind of like I did, I had some real estate friends that I reached out to and had some light videography contacts, but nothing huge. There's a couple of questions that I would ask. And if you're looking at getting into this in the long term, we're talking to full-time drone service providers or people that want to gain some drone flying experience full time, not on the side or on the weekend. I would start with a question of, do I like this vertical? So take construction, for example. When we say verticals, we're talking about industries. You can loosely interchange those words. So you got a construction vertical, you got telecommunications or utilities, so power lines, wind turbines, you've got photo, video, real estate, all these different verticals, right? Let's take construction, for example. Do I like this vertical? Do I like the people that are in this vertical? Do I like outside aspect of that, right? Or would I like a real estate agent a little bit more? Some terms and conditions, constant communication, right? Maybe you're up later in the evening, real estate agent, you got to think about these people as people that you're going to be working with. They're up kind of late, sometimes accepting or declining offers. They're kind of squeezing things in, before the Sunday night because they got to get the listing posted on Monday. You've got to get to know the people that are in these industries, because if you know that you're not going to appreciate that work, or you just don't vibe with it really, then I would say stay away from that industry, if that makes sense. So you found an industry or a vertical that you like. Is it profitable, right? Is it an industry that has some money behind it, or some clients or some decision makers, we call them, that have some money behind them? So you don't necessarily want to get into an industry that is going to pass through drones. You want to make sure that this industry is sustainable and going to be utilizing drones and the data capture for a while. So Survey is a great example. They used to surveying that vertical. They used to, before drones would just kind of walk the property or ATV it, ride it basically. But these drones can fly it. You've got multi-rotor and fixed wing that can do all sorts of different things, different levels. So I don't see that industry slowing down in their use of drones. Now, that industry specifically, you've got certifications and things that you'd want to make sure that you are aware of. But just as an example, I see that as a profitable and sustainable industry. Then I would circle back one more time to any kind of personal connections or any kind of other relationship that you've had that can help you get started. Not necessarily and only to garner business, but maybe you're like me and you don't know all that much about construction, or you don't know all that much about photo video. I had to learn a bunch of this stuff a couple years ago. So maybe you have a connection that isn't a business prospect, but somebody who can teach you, who you can say, hey, can we meet for coffee once a month? Or hey, can we hop on a call next week? And can you kind of explain this idea? I've got multiple contacts in a lot of different verticals that I don't currently work in, that every once in a while I'll have a super specific question. And it's so helpful to have either an email or a number to text or somebody you can reach out to specifically to say, hey, do you guys use this? What did you think about this? And hear their opinion, right? A quick plug for DLA, that can be huge with having an academy and a community like DLA provides, to where you can throw that out there and somebody like John or another industry professional will get on there and answer your questions. So that's been huge in me gaining some experience and some initial training in some of these industries and verticals.
Oh, that's great to hear. You said the phrase already. It's market research you're doing by talking to these people, developing connections and understanding, well, what do I have? What could I gain? How can I grow in this vertical? And you're asking that first question that you brought up earlier in this conversation of, what do I like to do? What am I interested in? I think when I first started learning about drones, my background is in videography, was just videography, photography. You're replacing the helicopter in the sky, and you're providing eyes, cheap eyes from the sky, which is great, but that's the creative side. But there is the data analytical side to drones too, which I think it really offers a spectrum for people to choose from, in the creative mind, the analytical mind, the hybrid person in between, when you're doing, mapping and a lot of the work that you do at the Drone Ranger. So it's amazing the opportunities that are out there that you may not think about right away.
Yep, 100%, man. And that market research is critical. So if your answer to the question of, hey, what vertical do you want to go into? What industry you want to get into is, I don't really know, then what you're looking at doing is doing some market research. And lucky for you, that's free if you've got internet and a laptop, right? You can just look at all these different industries. You can Google, watch YouTube videos. You can just sponge and soak in all this information so that you can make the clearest decision possible. And so for me, initially, I did that and I landed in telecom, construction, and photography and videography, right? So a couple of different verticals and industries. But after doing some market research, reaching out to connections and kind of running through this quick list here, that's kind of where I landed. And it's also okay if you think you'll end up one place and then you get a big client or real estate firm. Maybe you're going after construction and you got in touch with a real estate firm and they just wanted you to just do all real estate, right? That's okay if you thought you were going to go somewhere and you ended up going somewhere else. But
Yeah.
just be flexible and don't get stuck in analysis paralysis, start taking some steps. I would do a little test, right? So I would take 3, 6 months, some kind of budget, and do some market research and then test that market research and say, okay, we're going to market with our offline and online. Watch the previous podcast. We're going to market to real estate professionals and construction firms, right? And so we're going to take 3 months or whatever amount of time and put our resources behind that. Then after that 3 months, you can check on that and go, okay, did that work? Great. Let's keep doing it. Let's double down on what worked. If it didn't work, you can either abandon it and try a different vertical, or you can analyze it and say, okay, why didn't it work? Was there a reason why we weren't hitting these real estate agents? Were we contacting them in the right way at the right time? Questions like that. That's where I would start if you're looking at getting into some of these verticals, but you're just really not sure which one. There's a path to do it. It's bite-sized pieces, right? The
Sure.
question can be kind of daunting and intimidating. What do I want to do? I don't know, especially in an industry that, like for me, I really didn't know all that much about, but you can learn it in bite-sized pieces and very inexpensive as well.
Well, and I appreciate that kind of how you wade into it too. You found the industry, you see what you want to explore. So here's how you can just kind of wade into it and test it out a little bit, which is an important step, I would imagine.
100%.
This is a nice segue into our last question. We're talking about people who are just starting out, who really want to just start their own business using their drone. It's not easy going beyond just finding the right vertical. What advice would you have? It could be anything that you have for somebody just starting off, maybe not too sure what to do, a little freaked out. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, so I totally understand that and I totally vibe with that. And that's a very normal feeling, right? Starting a business, looking at starting a business can be very intimidating. The main piece of advice I would give is to start, to take a step, to go buy business cards, or to go to that real estate meeting you've been putting off, or to start watching videos, start texting some friends, anything like that, right? Because if you stay behind your computer, or in this phrase I used before was analysis paralysis, then nothing's ever gonna happen, right? If you do what you've always done, the result you're gonna get is what you've always gotten. If that makes sense? You can wrap your brain
Yeah.
around that?
Yeah.
So go take a step, and if it works, take another step, keep going, right? And if it fails, like I mentioned earlier too, that can be just as valuable. The failure is a great teaching point for, true entrepreneurs and true people that are really wanting to get behind them, right? The advice I would give is just to make a move and maybe make a mistake and then learn from that and then keep moving. Don't get stuck in perfection because you're never going to get anywhere.
Awesome. I mean, that's a great reminder, and that's something we tell ourselves that throughout, many steps in life. And I think in here in this particular situation, it really resonates. And thank you for coming on, sharing your experience that you've been having with the drone ranger, your business that you've had going here for 3 years, so very successfully.
Yeah, John, thanks again for having me. Happy to be here. Thanks, y'all.
Hey, if you got a question, let us know. We would love to find the answer to your drone question. You can submit your question over ydqa.io. We'll see it. We'll find someone who can answer it. Or if you're part of the Drone Launch Connect community, it's a great community where people are sharing their wins or losses, their experiences, their work. Check it out. Type in a question there. If somebody in that community doesn't answer it before we can on this podcast, we will get it on this podcast and find the answer. Until then, we'll see you in the sky.